there are a few reasons why I'm here tonight and why I'm so interested in this question and this problem. Is I'm an environmental consultant for a living, and I've been doing this kind of work in Hudson Valley since the late 1980s, and I've dealt with construction and demolition debris landfills up and down the Hudson Valley from Westchester up to Columbia County. I'm still monitoring and cleaning up construction and demolition debris sites that were dumped in the 1980s. These are not trivial sites. They're all different. You can't really tell what's in that pile without chemical testing, and that's the reason that it's illegal under state law and it's illegal under town law to dump it here. So I guess that's part of the reason. That's the main reason. But I'm also the kind of person that when I'm told I'm not seeing something that's in front of me that I can see with my own eyes, I get intrigued and I want to know more. I want to know why I'm being told that. And so that's why I'm so interested in this project. There's been a lot of confusion because there has been some testing, and you're hearing from certain people that the testing shows that the fill is reasonably clean and should stay there. And then you're hearing from people like me and Paul Rubin and others that say that it was tested and there are contaminants in it and it shouldn't stay. The truth is there was some testing of the 10 church property, but not very much testing. There were 4 samples collected from the edge of the dump, and that not nearly enough to really tell you what's in that. And so what I would stress here tonight, and I think it's actually kind of a silver lining, is that the answer here isn't to do more testing. The answer is to dig it up and take it to an appropriate disposal location. And you don't necessarily need to occupy yourselves with should we do more testing or what do the tests mean. The material is illegal under the town of Woodstock law, and there's a simple remedy to get rid of it. Obviously, someone's got to pay for it, but I really think there's not a lot of use in discussing what the testing tells us or doesn't tell us.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
You want your question now?
Yeah.
Okay.
John, I just, when I reviewed the PVE results that I assume are the same as what DEC saw, I mean, it's a big, long list, but some of it seemed to me that it would reflect like bottom ash from coal-fired plants of some kind, which would be very, very high in, it's always high in heavy metals. I was on the periphery of that business, and I know how nasty that is, as well as dioxins and God knows what else, but it seemed from the characterization that I saw that it was a fairly high proportion of ash, which is some of the nastiest stuff you can get. So
are you asking if there was ash?
Yeah, what I'm asking is if that's a reasonable conclusion.
Yeah, so the question is there ash, like coal ash, in that fill material? The answer is yes, and the reason is this. It might be helpful to understand. You know that this material originally came from New York City, right? And then came to the Saugerties facility and then to 10 Church. And in New York City, for a couple of hundred years, as the city was developed and built out, that originally the 5 boroughs were very marshy, they had very ragged shorelines, etc. And over the decades, the city of New York basically hardened those shorelines and built them out, stabilized them so they could be built on. And what they dumped there to stabilize those marshy shorelines, a lot of the material anyway, was coal ash, which they had a lot of. It was a waste product that was generated every day in homes and power plants, etc. And so, as a result, when you dig out a foundation, let's say in New York City, it's very likely to contain coal ash because that's what's buried under a lot of New York City. And that's the reason this material is problematic. It's the reason it has to be loaded up into trucks in New York City and brought to licensed facilities. It can't be used just anywhere. And so that's really the root of all this problem in the first place, is the fill material, soil, etc. in New York City, along with the demolition debris, is what this waste consists of. And what you're saying, what you're pointing out is true, that ash contains heavy metals, hydrocarbons, dioxins, and other contaminants. It's not clean soil. And so what you end up here is this jumble of construction debris, then it's pulverized, mixed with the soils that also were in the trucks, and now you've got something that might look like dirt, but it's not. It's contaminated, pulverized C&D debris.
Is there still some kind of ongoing case against Corollas for their Saugerties facility?
Yeah, so the question is, a couple of years ago, the state of New York filed a civil suit against Joe Corollas and his company for the Saugerties facilities, because those facilities violated state law. And the question is that still ongoing? It is. There is still a lawsuit. The Attorney General is suing the Corollas operation.
Couldn't this be part of that? Couldn't this be somehow?
You would think.
Actually, we have asked that question, and actually, this is a really good direction for the town to take, is
Yeah.
to try to join this,
The same material.
remediation effort with the Saugerties remediation.
Yeah, we see the same violations,
Yeah.
many of them anyway, here at 10 Church Road.
Anyway, David.
John, question for you. If we can establish that there's all this sort of toxic stuff in the field there, what is the general timeline in your experience for this to get into the aquifer? How time sensitive are we before it becomes I mean, I border the Amy, so my well is next in line. And generally, what is our sort of how many years are we looking at for this to become a personal health issue?
Yeah, we don't have a great answer for that because there's just not much information to go by.
Shouldn't the building department initially have done a site plan review for a project that takes 200 truckloads of fill? That's one question. Second question, why wasn't an action brought against Corollas for delivering contaminated fill? I don't understand why he's out of this whole equation.
Well,
And we know he's a criminal, certainly, and there have been other actions against him. Why was he even hired in the first place?
yeah.
That's my question.
Okay. The town did charge Corollas criminally for dumping, and he was one of the 3 defendants in that town criminal action that was resolved in 2022. And he was fined $1,500 after he pled guilty.
They decided to charge him for one truckload. It was $1,500 per truckload, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Instead of the 200, they accepted one count of the fine because they didn't think that they could get. They knew they weren't going to get everything.
Yeah.
And
And then,
actually, could you address the question about why Conigliaro didn't have to get permitting to have that much?
yeah, that's a good question. Why wasn't there a building permit required for the project from the very start?
Obviously, it
Yeah.
needed a retaining wall of some sort for such an enormous.
Well, actually, it was
That
also,
would be done.
it was very close to the neighboring property, so the way it was dumped and where it was dumped was already, no permit would have ever been given for that material. Maybe
Well,
you could, I mean.
Let me finish answering that, because I think that was one of the very early mistakes that was made here. There was because what we're told was that at that time, the property owners planned to, this project was about building a house, relocating a driveway, putting in a new electric service, and adding the fill. Any project like that, you would think, would require a building permit. But no permit was required, and that really allowed this dumping to occur with no engineering oversight, no regulatory controls. There was no design, there was no plan, and so it was a
I thought earlier in the film, there was some mention about any fill being used in Woodstock has to come from this area.
Right.
Can't be brought in from the outside.
well.
Wasn't that mentioned in the?
Yeah, what they said was that if you're going to bring fill into your property, it cannot be construction and demolition debris. It's not allowed in the town of Woodstock, period.
That's town law, actually.
That's the town law.
Would any of the neighbors, I know there are some neighbors here, like to comment on how that fill was brought in? Because we watched it happen. Jesse?
I lived just below, and it was just at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was dumped day after day after day, and I called the police a million times. And we all heard it, and there was nothing else going on. It was crazy loud and crazy disturbing. And it was after the particular hours also cut all the trees down. So we were also right before calling the police every day and calling the village every day.
And the simple answer to what's the path forward is that we expect that material to be removed, entirely removed from the site. Well, Chris is talking about the regrading that was done in April and May of this year, and most of the material was simply excavated and placed in a different part of the property. But there's a receipt for removal of some of that material. 4 dump truck loads were removed around that time, and they were brought to, the receipt said they were brought to a facility called Gutierrez Enterprises. And so that's presumably where that material went. There's a question as to whether that facility is licensed or permitted to accept C&D debris. So I think that's what you're referring to. So that's an open question.
But isn't it a residential site?
Well, the address on the receipt is in a residential neighborhood, so it didn't make any sense.
Is that in Hurley?
Pardon?
Is that in Hurley?
No, it's in Kingston.
And where should I have been
Early.
taken? Where should I have been taken, John?
Well, it depends on what it was. All it said was 4 loads of asphalt and concrete was dumped. That's all it said. So it looks to me like, based on the little bit of information on the receipt, tells me it was that material that they had separated, the recognizable chunks of concrete and asphalt and rock and brick, and that's what was taken off the site. So that should have gone, well, it should have gone to an appropriate place, but there's any number of places it could have gone to.
How much, in your estimation, would it cost to clean up the 10 Shady dump?
You know, this question of what is the price tag for getting rid of it, we really don't know. And I want to emphasize this. We don't know how much material is even there. After 4 years, we don't know. I don't think anybody knows. And that's one of the first questions that should have been answered back in 2020 when the town started to look into this, is how much material is there? Where is it on the property? Once you have a decent answer for that, then you can start to put together cost estimates and a plan for getting rid of it. So we are really at the very beginning of this. Now, it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy to survey that material, figure out how much is there and where it can go. But that hasn't, if it's been done, that hasn't been made public. One other thing that relates to that is, in 2020, when this dumping started, it was being placed on one part of the property. It was actually the far side of the property from where the Amy property line. It was only months later, as the dumping continued. The dumping went on for 6 or 7 months. The second half of that period, the last several months, they made a second dump area very close to the Amy property line, and that's what you saw a lot of in the film tonight. But it raises a question in my mind is, where is all the material? It looks like the remediation plan, the regrading, only addressed one of those 2 dump areas. So this kind of shows you how much in the dark everybody is still. And so that the 2,800 cubic yards, the 200 loads, all of those are in question. It could be significantly more than that. We just don't know.